Had the FBI in Chicago. We're doing things. We haven't searched Chicago yet. When we do, Chicago will be very quickly a very, very safe city. But if you look at what's happening in Memphis, it's great. But you got to look at Washington. People are coming up to me, people that work in the White House, they're saying, "Thank you, sir." And I immediately know what they're thanking me about. It's thanking, they can walk to work. They would never walk to work a year ago.
It's President Donald Trump yesterday talking about public safety in Chicago and referencing the efforts he's undertaken in other areas like Washington, D.C. And the governor today set to sign an executive order to address accountability with federal law enforcement on the ground in Illinois. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning, and tons to tackle with this story, as you've also got the U.S. Supreme Court still toying around with the issue of, can a temporary restraining order be reversed to allow for the Trump administration to have the National Guard protect federal assets and federal property and personnel. So that's the crux of this debate here. And also you get the immigration enforcement issue with a big raid in Little Village that happened yesterday morning, and a lot of reaction to all of that. So here with you each and every weekday morning, get the latest headlines at thecentersquare.com. So let's go ahead and Tuesday, Governor J.B. Pritzker was in front of the Economic Club of the city of Chicago, and he was talking about the criticism he's received about calling or comparing, because Pritzker says he's never called Republicans or Trump a Nazi, but he compares what he sees happening to the Nazis. And he says he gets criticized for that, the governor told the Economic Club of Chicago. Here's the governor explaining a bit more of that Tuesday.
Speak out. You are going to be subject to the criticism and the whims of a very vindictive president of the United States. I get that. But what are our alternatives? Do we, as happens in other authoritarian regimes, do we just give in and let it all happen, which, by the way, would lead to troops on the streets, troops possibly being on the streets for the elections in 2026? I mean, in ways that none of us have ever seen anything like that. But that is what would happen if we all just sat back and let it happen. And I mean, yeah, there are business people who've gone and cut deals and universities that have cut deals. I'm saying people need to stand up. This is the moment for people to stand up.
And the governor went on to have that conversation, comparing, again, the Pritzker administration to what he says was evident in Nazi Germany before World War II really broke out. So the governor making those statements, of course, kind of just reiterating what he said in the past about the Trump administration's efforts. He also, if you go to thecentersquare.com, you can see the story that the governor really pushed back on the Trump administration when it comes to sanctuary policies, and just how that is going to play out with the governor saying that he wants enforcement of immigration law, but not the way the Trump administration is doing it. And this is clearly something that we're going to watch at the State House next week if they do anything further to address immigration enforcement. But President Donald Trump said that he is going to make Chicago safe. Here he is yesterday, again, mentioning the city of Chicago.
We had the FBI in Chicago. We're doing things. We haven't searched Chicago yet. When we do, Chicago will be very quickly a very, very safe city. But if you look at what's happening in Memphis, it's great. But you got to look at Washington. People are coming up to me, people that work in the White House, they're saying, "Thank you, sir." And I immediately know what they're thanking me about. It's thanking, they can walk to work. They would never walk to work a year ago. They can walk into work and they feel safe and secure, and it's beautiful.
So the Trump administration is looking at where they've used the Guard before to essentially bolster their efforts in Chicago or in Portland or elsewhere throughout the country. But all of this coming as you've got video out of Little Village in Chicago of immigration enforcement, and I'd play the audio to this, but it's full of expletives, and this is just some of the video that's going around, but you could see some of the public getting up into the personal space of immigration enforcement officers, and the person behind the camera here saying, get the F out, calling them all kinds of words. I think they also say, Nazi, and you can see a certain hand gesture being used as law enforcement try to get back into their vehicle. And the people around, the public, they start kicking the vehicle and more expletives and such. So you can see this is the type of thing that immigration enforcement is having to contend with in places like Chicago. And that's why ICE officials have noted they've seen 1,000% increase of attacks against ICE. You can go through the litany of other things that you've seen, the shooting in Texas where an assassin apparently was targeting ICE, but only shot ICE detainees and killed 2 of them. You've got the riotous behavior of some of the protesters. All of this around the enforcement of federal immigration law, and the Little Village raid has got the condemnation of Chicago Democrats. Congressman Chuy Garcia says what happened in the community was state-sponsored terrorism. Again, saying masked Gestapo, led by Gregory Bavino, conducted their campaign just a block from my house, and at other locations in Little Village and Cicero, they abducted community members, U.S. citizens, one of whom is a local elected official and government staff. The reckless operatives once again endangered innocent lives with chemical agents, violent aggression, and high-speed chases through our neighborhoods that ended in yet another crash, another wreck in our streets. The federal government is assaulting our city and neighborhoods, Garcia said. For 6 weeks, my community has been the epicenter of the administration's brutal attacks. Our community is organized, and dozens of courageous civilian members of rapid response teams gathered quickly, blowing whistles to alert others of the presence of masked agents. My office is in contact with our local leaders and resistance networks, and we will provide supports to identify and assist the people who have been taken. In Chicago, we take care of our own. And he finishes off his statement there in Espanol. Interesting to read that, in particular, the resistance networks, and looking at it here too, and the community is organized, and dozens of courageous civilian members of rapid response teams gathered quickly, blowing whistles to alert others of the presence of masked agents. There's a lot of debate right now about websites that may be able to document ICE activity. There's been apps that have been taken off of the app stores, ICE trackers and things like that. So, a question here is, where is that line of impeding federal investigations and federal actions and going all the way up to possible insurrection? I mean, the president of the United States has said he could use the Insurrection Act to justify being on the ground with National Guard to protect ICE. And when you've got elected members of Congress talking about working with rapid response teams to quickly blow the whistle and alert others, and also working with, quote, resistance networks, that's some interesting phraseology that I think is going to get some more attention. Meanwhile, you've got the Chicago City Clerk also posting about this, saying this morning federal agents started detaining community members, including 2 Aldermatic staff persons who are City of Chicago employees and U.S. citizens from Little Village in the neighboring town of Cicero, without due process, creating unsafe conditions for everyone. You've got the statement there from the Chicago City Clerk. Another statement here from Governor J.B. Pritzker. He talked about fake ideas in the Trump administration, comparing them to Nazis. He went further to describe this, and this is from the Rapid Response 47, which is a Trump-affiliated social media account.
This is what happened. People's rights started getting taken away. People got accused of being immigrants. This is before the Holocaust really took place. People were accused of being immigrants, and then laws were passed to limit immigrants, and then people who weren't actually immigrants were called immigrants, and then it was othering people, and that led to a lot worse things. What I'm saying is that this is how authoritarian regimes do it. They create these kind of fake ideas that there's an enemy out there and it could be sitting next to you at one of these tables. And so just somebody at your table that you don't like might be one of those enemies. And so let's round them up. Let's make sure that they are the subject of the laws that we're passing because we don't like who they are. That is what authoritarian regimes do. This is what happened.
So the governor, again, comparing the Trump actions enforcing federal immigration law after potentially 20 million people came across the border illegally in 4 years prior. You've got federal officials now with money to spend on going after federal immigration violations. And the governor's equating that to, what happened in Nazi Germany. All of this, the talk, the comments, the statements, that's all for public consumption, but where the action's actually going to happen is in the U.S. Supreme Court. We can go to the docket for the U.S. Supreme Court of the case Donald J. Trump, President of the United States versus Illinois, appealing to the court. And they filed their most recent brief earlier this week, and we're just waiting on the Supreme Court to take some kind of emergency action on this. But you can see here, let's go ahead and go to the reply of Donald Trump and what he has to say in this filing to the U.S. Supreme Court. And you can just see from the table of contents here, the federal government is likely to succeed on the merits because this is all preliminary action in the Supreme Court about whether or not Trump can use the guard in Chicago. And you had a temporary restraining order that was issued 2 weeks ago. Here we are at the 2-week mark. And yesterday, the federal district judge extended their temporary restraining order until the merits are dealt with. But obviously, if the U.S. Supreme Court intervenes on an emergency motion from the Trump administration, it could reverse that temporary restraining order while they still have to deal with the merits. So we're only talking about and if you guys have followed the case, with the gun ban, you kind of understand the preliminary actions that are taken to have some kind of initial step taken to right a wrong. And when it came to temporary restraining orders for the gun ban, for instance, you had Thomas DeVore, an attorney. He had thousands of temporary restraining orders prohibiting the state from enforcing the law on those individuals and businesses he had secured temporary restraining orders for. That was not on the merits of any of this, right? The merits ultimately were decided a year later by a federal district judge in the Southern District of Illinois. That case obviously going all the way up to the appeals courts where we're still standing by for some kind of ruling. But just again, all of this preliminary stuff, even with the case where you've got the Trump administration having a temporary restraining order against them to block them from having National Guard troops on the streets of Chicago. So they took an emergency motion to the U.S. Supreme Court on the preliminary injunction. And that's what we're looking at here. So they say that the federal government is likely to succeed on the merits. The determination whether to call up the National Guard is committed exclusively to the president's discretion. The president lawfully invoked Section 12406. Respondents' 10th Amendment claim is derivative of their meritless statutory claim. The other factors support relief from the district court's order. The issues warrant this court's review, and the equities warrant a stay. So they're looking to essentially put the temporary restraining order at bay. So here's just a little bit of the background from the most recent filing from the Trump administration to the U.S. Supreme Court in this case. The president called up members of the National Guard to Illinois to protect federal personnel and property from violent resistance against the enforcement of federal immigration laws. Summarized in the application, DHS officials have explained in sworn declarations that, among other things, outside the Broadview facility, rioters have physically assaulted federal officers, thrown projectiles at them in obstructed vehicles so that Confederates could slash the tires. Elsewhere in Chicago, a multi-car convoy ambushed and rammed into a DHS vehicle and tried to run over one of the occupants, while criminal gangs and transnational cartels have placed 5-figure bounties on the heads of DHS personnel. State and local officials have not only failed to provide sufficient assistance to restrain and deter such violence, but fanned the flames of hostility by slandering DHS agents as rogue vigilantes and jackbooted thugs. DHS has been forced to divert resources from its primary immigration enforcement mission to ensure the safety of its personnel and property, and all of this is occurring against the backdrop of similar violence in other cities, including riots in Los Angeles and Portland, as well as a lethal attack on an ICE facility in Dallas. The president thus acted well within his statutory and constitutional authority by federalizing and deploying the National Guard in Illinois based on the determinations that he is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, and that there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. So again, you can see the justification here and how the U.S. Supreme Court is going to address this. We'll be watching that closely because, again, while today was the two-week mark from the original temporary restraining order the federal district judge issued, that district judge extended the TRO while we see what the U.S. Supreme Court does here. So we've got the final filings, some of the other filings from the court docket. Let's look at National Immigration Justice Center, American Rights Alliance. You've got a professor who's filing, the Chicago Headline Club filing amicus briefs. But let's go ahead and look at National Immigration Justice Center and their document they gave to the U.S. Supreme Court. And just, again, getting an overview here, they say the Broadview servicing staging area is operated at capacity and beyond. Operations of ICE in the Chicago area have increased and expanded in scope. The meaning of unable to execute the laws. Current enforcement tactics in Chicago focus on arresting non-citizens in neighborhoods, towns, and suburbs, meaning the troops would likely be in those communities. Granting the application would involve National Guard troops in such arrests. If the court grants a stay, it should explain its reasoning. So you can go through and read some of that as well. You can find all of these documents yourself. Just go to the U.S. Supreme Court website and search for Donald J. Trump, Illinois, and you'll be able to find the case and read through all of the legal filings that there are up to this point. And we'll be keeping an eye on this, so I would definitely encourage you to go and get the headlines in your inbox by going to thecentersquare.com. All right. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning, breaking things down so you can get on with your day here with The Center Square.